welcome to the 3D Code Experience. My name is John Pennington. We've been taking you through the process of journaling my experiences in 3D Code along with the Cubify fans from the Cubify fans blogspot. My method has been very goal-oriented, where I would have a model that I want to create, and I would take you through the journey of me making that model. Very soon I'm going to create a sister project to this where I'm going to actually shift gears, and my method will then become tool oriented, and I'm going to focus more on the tools, what they are and what they do. But for now I'm continuing on the path that I originally was using. So as normal, I always open up in the regular and I go to my windows up here, and I'm going to restore the workspace that I like us to work in while we're doing the tutorial. And so we're going to reload in our tutorial layout. I actually explained how to set this up in a earlier video. Please look through them if you haven't already been through them, because most of my videos up to this point actually bring information that you're going to need in this video. So it's a progressive type of teaching. Today we're going to concentrate more on some things that I've already actually touched on, but I want to go a little deeper. I want to go a little deeper on what the reference images are and some of the settings you can use with the reference images. I also am going to primarily use the lathe primitive to make my object in this one. What I'm going to make today is going to be a chess piece. We're going to make the pawn. And so, as I said, we're going to start off with a reference image. Okay. Now, what you want to do is set yourself up so you can view the reference that you're going to do. I'm going to put a front-facing reference image, which is always on your Z. Z is your front and back axis. Okay. So go up here to where it says camera. Click on the arrow. Go to where it says background, and then go down to where it says reference image 4, and go to Z axis. And this is going to open up a menu. You see I have my image in there already. I have a tendency to prepare my images ahead of time. I'll put them in a image editor. It doesn't matter which one you use. GIMP is free. You can actually use the Paint, which comes in Windows. But what I'm wanting to do when I do this is get it kind of in the proportions I want, so I don't have to adjust it too much in here. So let's open that. There it is. Okay. Now, the last time I used this, I had the reference image toolbar docked, and so it stays out. Now, if I would close this and open up an image, then this would not have been there. Okay. So, and it'll allow you to re-choose. So I could actually go in here and change this picture from here, but we're not going to do that right now. I can resize this just like I do with the transform tool when I'm working with the model, as I go up and down and left and right. Okay. But for the moment, I'm going to hide this, or not hide this. I'm going to shrink that. When I do that, that's telling the program that I don't want this to be modified. Okay, and it's locked in. You see how I can turn around and it shifts with me. Now, the problem is there's no objects in here, so I couldn't show you some of the other tools. I'm going to show them to you in a minute. I just clicked my front-facing shortcut key, and you see it put it way over here. Okay, so let's bring that back for the moment. Let's go over here to sphere and just throw a sphere on the screen. Okay, and for the moment, let's transform that so it's kind of over top of our image. There we go. And as you can see, it's transparent going through that. All right, let's bring our reference image tools back up. I'm going to zoom in a little closer so you can see some things. You have an inside opacity. That actually is the opacity of the image itself. You get it if you get it too high, then and I apologize, it's actually the opacity of the object. If you get it too high, then you really can't see what you're doing. So everybody's eyes and computer monitors are a little bit different. So it's not that you need to set this to what I'm setting mine for, but you want to set it so that it works for your eyes and your monitor. Okay. That was the inside opacity. The outside opacity actually has to do with the image itself. And if you notice, when it says inside, it's the image inside the object, and when it says outside or just opacity, it's the image outside of the object. So Just depends on how you want to see it that you set it for, but that's fine for me right now. I could go in here and flip the X, okay, or flip the Y, okay. I can rotate this, okay. That's clockwise and counterclockwise, and I can show or hide it, and it brings up the exact way it was. I can hide all, which means if I had more than one reference image, it would turn them all off for temporary. Or I can close this. If I close this, then I have to go back up here, go to a background image, and bring it back in. Okay, so I reset this because it's exactly the way I want it, and I'm going to lock that so that way nothing happens to it. If I didn't lock it, and I used a brush on here, it could change the image, because you can actually erase some of the image if need be. I find it best to prepare my image in other software, bring it in exactly the way I want it. If I was going to do a side image to go with this, I would actually want to have them in layer software where I can make sure that my images are exactly the same dimensions and my center points of the object that I'm tracing are in the same, so that way it's very easy for me to align them in here. We'll talk about a side a Y reference image later, but for this tutorial the pawn doesn't need two images, it just needs the one. Now we're using this image primarily to help us to know how to draw the shape that we're going to draw, okay? But it's also going to help us maintain a certain size, okay? If you don't have reference images and you start drawing, all of a sudden your proportions can get out. Now some people can freehand better than others. Not saying that I can, but sometimes I draw with, sometimes I draw without. I'm going to erase the or discard the layer that I drew the sphere on, because I don't need that sphere. I'm going to go up here, I've created a new layer, and I'm going to name this pawn. Okay, now I'm going to do this pawn in two parts. I'm going to from the neck down, I'm going to call that the base. I'm going to put it inside of the tree under the pawn, because I want to be able to move it by moving the layer pawn. Okay, so that's my base. I can create it now because there's going to be another one, and that's going to be the top. Okay, and that's really just going to be that elongated sphere that's going to be on the top. But to create the base, we're going to go into our primitives, which is down here. Oh, I had it shrunk. Now that's something you got to look at every now and then. So there we are. All right, so it's objects. Let me just double check myself here. It's okay. The primitives are in I have it set up here, but I just want you to be able to find it as well if you don't. Okay, so it's an object and it's in the primitives. So I'm going to close this. I could have selected it in there, but I go to the objects, and there it is right there, my primitives. Okay, I just want you to keep a reference in your thoughts as to more than one way to get to something. I almost always use my space bar. I've created a shortcut for that. Shortcuts are just as easy as grabbing something and dropping it up there. Okay, and then you can remove them just by taking them out of there. Okay, so there we're in the primitive mode, and we're going to work with this one right here. It's called Create Lathe. So when I click on that, and I get a cylinder because it's in cylinder mode, but you actually work in cube mode, which is interesting. Well, but I'm going to stay in cylinder because the pawn is almost you know, it's a lathe tool. It's a very circular shape. It has no sharp edges. I could make chess pieces with squared edges, but for now we're going to use this. Now I like to make this bigger, and I want to be zoomed in like this. Now before I start using the tool over here, I want to give this some rough proportions. So I'm going to make this longer, and I'm going to make this wider, and I'm going to bring it down. Okay, a little bit more. Okay, and I can tell right now that I forgot to do one of my normal steps. See the curve at the top of that? Okay, so what I forgot to do is to set up my orthographic view. So So we go up here to the top and we look right here where we're able to switch between perspective and orthographic, and anytime it's in that position, it's perspective. So there we are, now we're in orthographic. Okay, let me get a little closer again. Let's go back to adjusting this, make this bigger, and it's about where I want it. I want the base and the neck to be about where they're at. I could make it wider, but then that would make it taller. So what I'm going to do is use the tool over here to make those adjustments. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to put a dot about here. Actually, I'm going to put one here, and then I'm going to move it in and basically give it a curve. Now, before I start using this tool, I want you to understand a couple things, okay? You have your regular curve, you have which is a soft curve, and you have a B-spline curve, which is another form of curve, and then you have hard curves, okay? So when you right-click, you actually switch between those. That's a hard curve. This is a B-spline. You know it's a B-spline because the dot or the vertex is not on the line, and actually there's control parameters that you're not seeing right now. We could put them up there, but I'm not as worried about that. So sometimes you'll need to switch between those, so just know that I like soft curve for most of what I'm doing because it's more precise. Okay, so I'm going to click another one and I'm going to drag this out. And what I'm doing is I'm paying attention over here when I'm moving when I'm moving on the grid on the right. I'm paying attention over here to see how things have lined up, because I want to get the shape of the pawn using these tools. Okay, so as you can see, you just work with them like that. Now see, this has a little bit more of a bell than what I have, so I just click right in the middle and I bring it out there. If those tooltips distract you, I believe it's up here in view. Oh no, it's in preferences. So you go to edit, preferences, and then down here it says show tooltips. Let's click OK. Now they don't pop up every time you're over top of something. Alright, so I'm looking pretty good on that edge. I want to bring this down just a tiny bit and maybe out some. I want you to notice that I do see that this is not centered perfectly, but that's alright because I'm working on a round object. I know that it's going to be okay, and it's more a reference for shape than it is for size. I'm going to leave it where it's at. It's not going to harm me. Alright, let's go click down a little bit. Let's get into this area and click about here and bring this one up. Okay, and you can see in here where we're not lining up. And if you're having a hard time seeing that stuff, then you can click on the tool to show again, and you could adjust the opacities. This is fine for me, and hopefully it's showing up fine enough on the YouTube video. Okay, so I'm going to go over here and just gently bring this up and in. Now see how I'm lined up more? I've lost a little over here. It's not much, but it's just a tad. There we go. And it's just a little bit of an experimentation type thing. And this one here needs to be sharper on the bottom. So I'm going to bring it like that. And there's kind of like a groove here on the very bottom of the pawn. And so we want to put that in there. And so the easiest way to do that is just kind of pick a spot, right click it until it's the shape you want it to be. I'll put another one in here, and then I'm going to grab in the middle of this and go like that. And I can that's a sharp edge. I could go in and put more of a flat edge in there. It's all just all in what I want. Remember, this is your model, your artwork. You get to decide. Okay. And see, that's a little bit sharp in there, so I'm just kind of softening some of that. There we go. The switch to the B-spline, it gives me a little bit smoother curve. Alright, and this, I think I want it to be a sharp point, and we'll bring it right down to the bottom. And there we go. That's going to be the base. I accidentally clicked on Save Curve. Okay, so now we have to apply that. Now what's important for you to understand is that when you're creating these base primitives or any primitives, that if there's some very sharp edges in here, you could lose your detail, especially like down here in this little groove. You could lose your detail if you don't have the resolution where it needs to be. Always do your lathe modeling on your low resolution so that it doesn't bog down your machine, that the processing speed is not compromised. Okay, but after you've gotten your shape and you're satisfied, remember this is a what we call a point of no return. We're going to bake it, and that's it. It's either we made the recipe correct or we didn't. So now let's click on the increase resolution, and for this simple model I only need it increased once, but had I not increased it, the edge of this might have been eroded a little bit. So now I'm going to click apply. Okay, and that actually applied it. See how now you see in the middle of my model those dots? That's basically because there's two of them overlapping, the one I baked and the new one. Okay, all right, but we're not going to use this for the next one. We're going to go to the top layer and we're going to switch to the sphere, and let's just bring this down a little. We can close this, not close it but shrink it, and let's get into the place to where we're able to see more of the top. Okay, now I could probably use this one here, because this one allows me to stretch this a little bit differently. Okay, so I can shape this differently. Now let's start it out that way for the moment. Let's bring this down. Okay, I want to bring this out a little. Whoops, we did the turn rather than a let me Control Z a couple times to make sure I'm, yep, we're back where I want to be. Okay, and then I go a little bit more on this just to see what it looks like. Yeah, and you can, whatever really makes you happy when you're working with these things. Okay, I can tell that this needs to be brought in. I'm going to do this a different way though, so I'm going to apply that, and then I'm going to go over here to my pose tool. It's one of my favorite tools. And I'm going to make sure that the symmetry is on, and I want it to be on the X and the Y so that it stays symmetrical the whole way around. And go back to my pose tool and do the paint select. Yeah, that's more what I want. And I want to just shrink it in, bring it down, and that's really all this is for me. Is more of an adjusting type tool. I'm going to apply that so I can look at it. I'll look at it from the side, from the front. Yeah, I think I'll be all right with that. There's a little bit of a sharp line on that, but it's not going to hurt me. I'm going to bring back my other thing so I can see it together. Alrighty, so with that, I'm gonna go to, first thing I want to do is turn off the reference image. Like I told you, if you close it, then you've got to bring it up like this. So there you go, you open it, whoops, got to select it, open it, and there it is. And I'm not sure why it disappeared, but it did. And so now what I want to do is close this. No, not close this. I wanted to hide it. Close, accept it, boom, and I'm gonna go over here and show hide, boom. Okay, and then I can keep this because if I wanted it, I could bring it back up. Okay, let's put it back down there for now. What I want to do is center things a little bit better, and so I'm going to go to the top and I'm going to select the transform tool, okay, and that's going to be our pawn. And that's how easy that actually is to do. Okay, I'm going to quickly do something else here. I'm going to go over here and color this. I could actually merge these together. We're going to merge the top with the base. Okay, that makes it one piece. Let's go over to paint real quick and let's just make this thing look cool before we end the video. I'm going to go to my smart materials. I'm really loving these smart materials. They're so simple to use. I'm going to choose metal because I like metal chess sets. And we're going to go down some once they come up. There we are. I have one I really like. This one right here. And I think this looks really cool on here. So it's doing some calculations in order for this thing to work. I'm going to say okay, okay, and give us a little bit of time. Look how beat up that is. That might be a little heavy duty, but we'll probably switch to another one. But that looks like an abused piece of chess, a chess piece. So I'm going to switch probably in a second here as soon as it's done doing what it's doing. A little rougher than I like, although I could change the depth. Let me see what it'll do when I change the depth first. Alright, so you got adjustments on these textures up here. Let me close the preview options. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Bring us back up. I need to move this out of the way. Sometimes these windows get in the way. That's one thing. You will find yourself moving windows out. So the depth is 50% right now. Let's take this down so that it's not quite so aggressive. There we are, about 12%. Still a little bit of dings. And go over here, right click on the material. Fill the whole layer. Give it a moment. And that's done. Now we can close this. There's our finished piece. And because we reduced the depth, it looks a lot different. And go over here to render. I like to put them on a little bit of an angle whenever I render anything. I'm going to take it a little bit bigger and then just do a render. So there you have it. That's how we make a pawn. Now, when we come back in our next video, we're going to make the knight to go with this. And so it's going to get a little more critical because now our pieces are going to have to work together in size. Well, when I do the horse or the knight, I'm going to need a front image as much as I'm going to need a side image. And I may have to create my own images and go from there, but we'll see when I get ready. I'm going to prepare for that. I hope you've enjoyed today's video, and look forward to hearing some comments on you and seeing some of the projects you're doing. Have a great day, and thanks for watching the 3D Code Experience.